and blossom.
It'll grow.
Dirt doesn't grow.
Oh, no, dirt, it does.
All that's supposed to cover the dirt.
Yeah, but it's gonna take a little
$48,000.
Okay.
You
OPM,
are live.
other people's money.
All right. Good to
Oh,
go.
hey, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Member Black. Yeah, I'm here.
And Mayor Piper. Here. Okay. All right, any public comment on anything that's not on the agenda?
No one here?
Then we'll close the public hearing and consent calendar.
I move the consent calendar.
I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
I didn't know there was a consent.
Yeah, it's one little
My
item.
bad, sorry.
Discussion item, and you're on.
Thank you. Good evening, committee members. Robert Samario. So I'm going to really just start by saying that, you know, the good news is we don't have any tension that surrounds this budget process. It's going to be a straightforward process. That's my guess. I don't see anything that's going to cause us to be concerned on the revenue side, the expenditure side. So it's going to be a really straightforward process. I think the only thing that would be of any concern that we're going to want to talk about at some point is the refuse side of things, and we'll get to that later. But in terms of the general fund, because we sort of solved that problem, at least until recently, we solved the problem of the imbalance due to the refuse subsidy. We are essentially balanced, and we anticipate that for the foreseeable future, absent anything dramatic happening to our revenues, that we will be balanced structurally for the next several years. So today we're going to go through the preliminary revenue projections for next year, which are built upon this current year. We just had a mid-year report last week where we give you kind of a sense of where we're at this year, what it might look like this end of this year. Well, that's kind of what I used to build next year's numbers, and I didn't do anything dramatic or unusual, but we'll go through those. But we'll still continue to monitor that. We still have a lot of time before we adopt the budget, so if we see any hiccups in our revenues, we're going to talk about those and bring them to your attention. And then we're going to look at how our overall revenues and expenditures kind of looking together. Do we have a deficit, surplus, and so forth. So our biggest revenue, as you know, it's over 50% of our budget is the property taxes. And just if you're interested, you can see kind of the trend over the last 10 or so years, 11 or so years. You know, there's some usual numbers in there, but you know, when you just kind of look over a 20-year period, you're typically going to see anywhere from 3 to 5, maybe 7% growth, but I would consider 4 to 5% kind of an average. And it's really because of two things. One, the property taxes grow statutorily by 2% max. So if CPI was 1%, then they could only grow 1%. But CPI has been above that, so the county is reassessing all properties under Prop 13 by 2%. And the only thing that adds to that then are supplemental assessments, reassessments. Typically, if you see home sales, a lot of home sales, you're going to see those assessed values go to market value. And here, I suspect in the city of Rolling Hills, you have a lot of capacity because you have an older community, stable community. The Prop 13 assessed values are so low relative to the market value that there's anytime a property reassesses, that's a big jump in that Prop 13 number and brings in additional revenues. So that extra percentages above 2% is really driven by the home sales and their turnaround and the volume of sales. So for next year, you know, I'm expecting about a 4.75% growth this year. I'm expecting it to really just meet budget. For next year, I'm assuming 4% only because the fact that we have this uncertainty. We talked about last time with this letter we got or a request for fill out a form related to direct assessments, but the county will provide property tax relief to any homeowners that suffered damage. We don't know what that could be. If there are any, according to the letter or email I got from the county folks, they said there were some who sustained damage and they will get some property tax relief. I don't know what that is, but I just thought rather than doing 4.5% or 5%, just at least give a nod to the fact that we might see some property tax relief to certain homeowners that may affect our numbers.
But their damage is not off their assessed value, it's off the real values. So if I bought this,
Yeah.
if it's on the books for $1 million
Yeah.
and now it's a $5 million property and I had some damage,
Yeah.
I got to get a long way down before
That's true.
Okay.
So again, we could be more, I don't want to say aggressive, we can be more normal and say 5%.
No, I like it.
No, keep it boringly safe.
But that's the only reason, I felt the same with you, it's unlikely that we're going to see any impact, but if case there is, I'd rather be, wrong in that direction than the other direction. The real property transfer tax, it would kind of normalize into the $60,000 range. We were really seeing big numbers a number of years ago, but since then, we've just seen it for a pretty stable number. This year, we're at $30,000, so I'm projecting that we're going to be at the end of the year $60,000, which is pretty close to where we were last year. And then this should say 26 projection, I'm assuming we're going to have about a 4% growth in line with the property tax growth. Again, that's really a number driven not by value per se, but really turnover in sales. So if we see a normal turnover in home sales, which we're seeing has not abated or reduced for any reason, whether it be landslide or anything else, so we're assuming sort of the normal 4% growth.
And that last number should be a 26?
26.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The building revenues is the one that sort of, it's always, baffles me because, one, we get really late invoices or statements from the county. They could be sometimes 3 months late in providing us the numbers for, revenues collected and their costs. This year, in 25, we only budgeted $400,000 because at, 3/4 of the year into the year last year, we were only like at $250,000, $300,000. So I was worried we're not going to achieve what we saw like in 24 or 23 or 22. But then these late numbers come in and all the way through September that related to the prior year, and it got us up to 537 last year. So our $400,000 budget is probably low, but halfway through the year, we're at $200,000. Now, my understanding is there's some big projects in the pipeline that we could see some bigger numbers come in the second half of the year. So for that, I just sort of bumped up my projected numbers to 450, and same with next year. It's just an unpredictable revenue. I hope, I
So I
think
gotta
there's,
tell you, I didn't like that got bumped up because I wasn't sure about it either.
yeah, I think we're going to be at 450 by the end of the year because if it's true that these bigger projects are in the pipeline and will materialize this between now and June, then we will hit the 450 number. And so I just assume, but I didn't want to project 500,000, or 550, which is more in line with what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. So I thought 450 was a reasonable number to project for next year.
Because I was thinking 400 again, but you really think 450 is reasonable?
I think it is. I think there's nothing to suggest that the building activity has slowed down at all. Interest rates are probably going to start to inch down a little bit, in my opinion. So I don't think there aren't any barriers to development and the kinds of things that people typically do to improve their home.
That was the only one I had a question on.
And where I kind of differ a little bit is, I was expecting to see a bump in our values because of Palisades
Right.
burning down. Zip. Like, we've really had no real action here. Like
Yeah.
Newport Beach, they're slammed. Manhattan Beach, you can't even get anything because everything that comes on the market is sold. And here,
Yeah.
we've just really been super quiet. So, which to me is a little more unnerving than I was expecting, because I was kind of expecting.
Me too.
You had a $20 million house in Palisades, you can come over here and buy one for half the dollars, you can move your tax bases, and we're similar, and maybe the similar is the problem. I don't know what the problem is,
Yeah.
but I was very surprised on how much did not materialize at all.
Interesting.
So,
Because I'm here like where I used to live in Santa Barbara, that there are people who are moving into that direction, and they're starting to see some upward pressure on the prices up there.
yeah, so I think is the uniqueness of what we are. You either love it or you don't. And so West Siders and Palisades, I just don't, it just didn't materialize. So it's gonna be kind of interesting to see, and also with all the Chinese money being stopped, that's taken a lot of pressure off of the upward motion of our price. So I'm not a big fan of making either one of them bigger, because we're gonna sell some houses just because people are gonna leave, but we're not gonna see on some of those houses going from here to here. and we do a little bit as our population turns over. I don't know how you politely say that. So there is some of that happens, but I don't think there's, I mean, it's gonna be interesting to me
Yeah,
what
yeah.
actually happens.
Like I said, if we're talking about, property transfer tax, it's the number of sales, has nothing really to do other than, although it's based on the value, but it's really more driven by volume. This is sort of driven by how much the value of the selling price, right? And the higher it is, we get more property tax because it gets readjusted. Building revenue is just strictly how much development is going on in the city. And again, there's nothing to suggest that it's going to slow relative to previous years. And so I think 450 is a conservative number by its nature, relative, at least when you compare to the last 3 years. But what's interesting is Christian shared with me that he spoke to, I think Samantha does part-time real estate or some, but that the median price in Rolling Hills has actually gone down. So whatever that's worth.
Well, part of that is the houses that are selling right now are the ones that are either super old and need a ton of work. There hasn't been a turnover, a lot of the bigger ones, like your house or my house, like those
Yeah.
have not, people are just staying.
Yeah.
I
They
think
probably
you-
got a low interest rate and don't want to lose that probably.
I think there's a combination of that, and if you've already committed to stay in this state this long, it doesn't say we're trying to leave tomorrow. I think the people who are looking to leave left,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, and I'm looking for, of course, for any kind of input from you in terms of what you believe and what you would recommend to council on any of these. So if you think, it sounds like 4% sounds like a good number, it's conservative for property taxes. For property transfer tax, it again assumes that we're going to have a similar turnover in properties of relatively, same price, if you will. So that's what this is based on. If you feel like we should lower that, we can.
Like we lower it down to the 400,000?
And then with the building activity, if you feel like maybe we should go lower, I'm open to
This-
whatever.
I mean, personally, right now, I would take these two lower, because I'd rather, one, get at the end of the year and say, hey, we were so conservative that we have extra money.
Okay, good.
Two, with a 25% tariff on lumber,
Yeah,
steel, lumber, all those things, it's, the people I know who are thinking about things are all gonna wait a minute until this works its way out. So, I don't know when it's gonna work its way out, or if it's ever gonna be a thing, but,
okay.
I mean, don't you agree?
Yeah, I'd like to drop it to 400 for the
Okay.
building permit. The property transfer,
It's not enough money
it's
to
not
worry
enough
about.
to worry about. That was my thought.
Okay.
So I just thought that would drop at 50.
Okay, then motor vehicle license fee, it just goes up every year by about 2%, 3%, so just projecting 290 for next year. It's a good sized number for us, it's a good sized revenue for us, it's almost
Yeah, no, that was fine.
half of our building revenues. So this is the overall picture, if you want to kind of lay all of our revenues out. Our adopted budget is about $2.6 million. I'm expecting that we're going to be above that by about $130,000. And, I'm sorry, by about $115,000. Now, part of that is because we got that grant that was unbudgeted of
Wait a
$48,000.
minute, what are you talking about now?
So I'm on this slide here, so if you look at, so the first column, adopted budget, $2.6 million. That's the total budget that we came up
Hang on, that's a
a while
different,
ago.
that's a different slide. Oh, 2.7, here I see your,
Orangey kind of color, that is my preliminary projection for the current year. So that is about $120,000 more than our adopted budget. But again, if you look at the third row from the bottom, you see that grant we got for the turf removal and the irrigation project.
there's 48,000
Yep.
bucks, I just looked at it as I walked in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's worth
So-
That's where I got 48,000 from.
So if you ignore that, we're gonna be in the $80,000-$90,000 range above budget. And then for next year, just.
So I didn't understand, because here on the front summary pages, it talked about a much bigger $300,000 surplus. Or how did what was that I was looking
Yeah,
at? Because in the summary stuff, it talked about how we're gonna wind up with a
let's,
$200,000
can we,
surplus.
we'll get to that after is that okay, or do you want me to jump to that right away?
I just want to answer that question.
Okay, let's see.
Because now you're saying 120, and here it said 200 to 300 on the front page. Page 5. This one. the summary page.
I don't have that in front of me, but,
It said we should have a overall surplus will be 200 to 300,000 range.
yes.
Now you're
I'll
telling
yeah.
me 120.
Okay, hang on a second.
I think,
Oh, yeah, if
I
you
think
go to
you
the
gotta-
if you go to the last page, you know, where's the last chart, if you will, right here.
It will,
And that's a combination of revenues and expenditures. So
okay.
The other one was
All
just
right.
revenues.
This just, okay.
Our
All right,
spend's
that's
down.
fine. So revenues higher and expenditures lower. Got it.
Right. So moving on to expenditures, this is a summary by department, and it
Right.
shows you kind of where we made some adjustments. And keep in mind that our approach on the expenditure side is that we're not looking to make decisions on all the line items. That's going to come later. Between now and late April, city manager Karina and her staff will be working to develop all the line items, doing the analysis, and then coming back to the committee and council with their proposed expenditures. This is just looking at what were they in the current year and making some tweaks for things that we know we're going to have to adjust for. For example, one of the things that we adjusted our current year adopted budget to for next year is the salary increases that are provided for in the MOU. There's a 3.5% COLA increase that's required under the MOU. And then there's a 1.5% merit-based bonus, so it's a discretionary bonus, but we build that into the numbers. On the benefits side, the MOU also says that we are going to increase the max contributions. You know, there's a cap for health, dental, and vision, so we factored that into the numbers. And then because when salaries go up, so do our retirement costs, because they're percentage-based. So nominal increases to that, but those were provided.
So we're required, obviously,
Yeah.
the cost of living, we don't have a choice on.
Yeah, and that's, in this, and you can see, it's not a lot of dollars. In total, we've made adjustments totaling about $83,000. So, but I wanted just to make sure you understood those. And then we also bumped up the sheriff, the law enforcement line item, because the sheriff, as far as we know, they're gonna bump it up by, like last year was 3.5%. We're not sure exactly what it is, but we're gonna learn about that probably later this week.
Yeah,
But we-
Thursday, we have our annual meeting with the sheriff's department.
Yeah, so it could be more, could be less, but we factored in essentially what happened to us last year, 3.5%, that's $12,000. And then the elimination of the election expense, so in the current year budget, we had $15,000 for the election expense, we're not gonna need that next year, so we took it away. And then we added $15,000 into our legal costs in the city manager's budget, related to CPUC matters, it's all related to the landslide, land movement.
I gotta tell you, I looked at the legal and attorney stuff, I thought we're gonna be spending more. I really do. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean,
So some,
legal, outside legal, you don't have a lot of things filled out. City attorney, you've got 75. I mean, we're spending a giant amount of money on legal stuff. I can't imagine that it's gonna be the same or only 15,000 more.
Right now, this year we're so remember that in the current year we're in, we lowered the budget for legal costs pretty substantially. So the budget was a lot higher, so what we made our budget this year was more in line with what we've been spending over the last couple of years. And so I think this year, at least for the ongoing general counsel work, I think we're gonna be about what our budget says. I think we're gonna be right at budget. I don't see us having big savings there. We are incurring unbudgeted costs again for
we are.
these certain items, but, so for next year, we're kind of leaving it the same, just because I think that's the right number. It could be off a little bit, but not much. But it's just adding $15,000 for these extraordinary kind of legal issues.
I think a lot of the insurance is picking up the insurance guy's bill.
They're picking up all that.
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing any
that's correct.
of that spend on our part. I think mentally, took me a second to get that.
Right.
Where I think, Pat's we haven't had a big tree issue, all the things that normally get us haven't really happening. I think it's a little bit of, he checks in with them. I think there's just some of that versus him being deeply engaged in the process.
There's these constant closed sessions, which he's, got a bill for, obviously, and all the work with all this, coordinating with these other people.
And,
He's putting in a lot of hours.
and a lot of the time is already built into what we pay in our retainer. So whatever we cover in the retainer is his time spent here. If we were to work on, for example, like something related to views and it involves him, then that would be potentially outside of the retainer cost. But most of the stuff I try to tackle in-house with my team and staff, and we'll check in with the city attorney's office
So
as
when
opposed to
he's
the city
sitting here
attorney's
for
office.
hours and hours, that's part of his retainer, he's not billing by the hour for that?
It's what we pay currently out of our contract with BPK.
We get a deal of a lifetime.
Oh my gosh.
But here's kind of where I'm at on some of this stuff, is one, on like election you had in there. Is there any way we could accrue and treat it like a bucket, so that we flatten it out, so it's not, we pay this year $50,000 and next year we pay nothing, and next year we pay 50, and then back and forth? Could we just make it into a thing that every year we put 25 grand into this bucket? And so that way it's a consistent,
Like a little savings account.
Yeah, what would be the value in that? Because we wouldn't spend the dollars, we're not
or,
gonna,
well, I didn't say spend any of it, I'm just saying is, from my standpoint is, it then takes that line item that goes 50 grand, nothing, 20 grand, nothing,
Yeah.
50 grand, just to kind of make it more of a flat
yeah,
accrual.
absolutely. I mean, we could do that. I mean, we can just put $15,000 there every year and know that one year we're not gonna spend it, another year we're not. We
Yeah,
could.
it
It's
just
just-
is a way to keep this, the up and down is, I don't like the up and down. I just like it to go smoothly in one direction,
Yeah.
and how to figure out what that is.
I mean, my experience is that where I come from, we used to spend $700,000 a year on election costs, and so every year we would drop it and it would go up. And it was, to me, that's just what you do, but since it's a small number, having it in there every year is no problem.
Anything, if there's anything that we have that is an ongoing thing, that is not every month we do this or every year we do this, to me, if we can just put it in as a flat item, it just takes the variable out of this.
Yeah, totally fine with that. So we can
Our idiosyncrasies.
no, it's okay. I get you.
But I think honestly, we could put more money on legal, because it's gonna show them. If it doesn't, consider ourselves lucky. From my standpoint is, I'd rather not have, the less money we have laying around that's not assigned to something, people have ideas, we wanna avoid that.
And keep in mind that there are legal costs that are budgeted in the planning department, which is, view-related issues and,
Yeah.
or, all those kinds of things that are separate from the general council work, which is in the city manager's budget.
Just
So-
seems like we have a handful of lawsuits and it could get crazy.
Yeah.
And those lawsuits right now are being picked up by the authority.
Yeah. I don't know if it's gonna, I mean, you care, what do you want to do?
I think it's a good idea. Otherwise, we'll just spend it on stormwater.
Yeah. Oh, and she missed you when you weren't here last time. She showed up. Catherine said hello.
How much water's cleaned since our last visit?
I think it was 0.
Oh, okay, just
Okay.
wanted to make sure we were still on the same number.
We're nailing that. So what do you want to, so what's a reasonable amount a fair and reasonable amount of money to add to what BBK might do if this 16 lawsuits become a thing and RPV decides to sue us and?
Yeah.
So we won't, I think we can, I think previously, I'm trying to see what we had in there originally for, I think it's not, we can place additional monies in the city attorney's account, but I think we want to look at how much we pay towards our liabilities and properties and our renewals through the authority. Because as we are working with, they're paying the cost for not just the legal, but they're paying the cost for our social media team that help revamp the website, get the information out there, talk to the media. They're paying those costs. So that's gonna show up in our renewals. I think when we start looking at renewals, that's where we might want to increase the budget for
Super easy.
JPIA. So I have to go back, Robert, to see if what we had previous years for the city attorney and increase it. I don't have it here.
To me, the insurance thing is a huge thing. Are you seeing, Jim, on your stuff, what's your insurance going up on things?
I haven't, Susan told me, so it means it must be bad. I'm still mad about the electric.
Because we're seeing on our apartment buildings, we're going up anywhere from 400 to 500% on our insurance. And then.
400 to 500%?
Yep, because the commissioners won't give them a 20% increase, so we're now out of State Farm's shutting us
Oh
down.
my gosh.
And we're seeing, and I'm seeing in, even in Florida, we're up probably only 150, 200%.
Oh my gosh.
And Montana, we're probably up 100%.
So,
These companies are getting crushed. They gotta do something.
oh,
I'll
Robert?
have to look into that. I mean,
looking at the city attorney,
we just paid property taxes, I know. I looked at insurance.
we budgeted 75,000.
And it coasts along at a,
We haven't gotten dropped.
75.
oh yes, we were all State Farm.
And they pulled out? Or was
Yeah,
it-
well, they dropped 70,000.
We had 90
our
before.
buildings.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
We haven't been dropped.
I apologize. So $75,000 was budgeted this year. The previous years, we were at 90,000, and we are at 38,000 right now.
75,000 is what we budgeted for the
This-
insurance
this-
costs?
No, this is for the city attorney, and then,
Oh, 75.
but,
and
yeah, but previous years, it was 90,000. I just couldn't
90.
remember.
The year before that, the actual was adjusted was 120.
120 was the
Yeah.
original, yeah, a few years ago.
That's what it was
Oh,
for
we
city
weren't spending
attorney.
it all, so we dropped it.
No.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to look at our,
Well, why don't we just go back to 100? That seems like a little bit
Well,
more.
we've got 75 here.
and we're at 38,000.
Mid-year, yeah.
It
mean,
just
he-
feels like it's coming.
I don't see how it can't. He's at 40, so that's, pretty close. Up it a little bit. What do you want, 100
I
or
was just
90?
to go from 75 to 100, so it's not unreasonable. We're not being crazy.
Let's say 90, because didn't you say we had 90 for a long time?
Well, this just last year, we had 90, then before that, it was 120.
120 prior to that.
Why not 90? 90's,
I'm good with that.
90.
I just wanted a
We'll
little
go
more.
back to 90,
I
yeah,
just want a
because
little
I
more.
think it's gonna be more.
And
How could
then-
it not be?
And then when we get to is
Even at
insurance.
90, he's working a lot for us.
And we'll talk to them, the insurance, the GP, the authority, and
Don't ask.
so we'll
Well,
talk.
we're getting a,
400%, 500%?
Yeah, we just went from one of our buildings,
Yeah.
we were paying. this little
we
building
just submitted our
was paying
renewals,
$400 a
so I'm
year.
not sure what
I just
that
wrote a
will be,
check
but I
for
can find out in the next week.
$19,000.
So as far as,
Buildings, you can't up the rent more than a certain percentage a year?
Nope.
Is that the whole state now?
No, LA County,
Just LA County?
and you can't evict anymore.
so as far as the authority, the costs associated with like the liability,
I didn't hear what you said.
the California Joint Powers Authority, the authority, I can, right now, we just submitted our renewals, so I'll have a better idea in a couple weeks of what that will look like, and I can find out.
So when we have the renewals, then, I mean, the best part is we can just plug that number in.
Yes.
But let's give it a healthy percentage increase for the next time around, because there's no way, no matter what it is, with us having a claim and in general, the horrible insurance environment, there's no way it doesn't go up 15, 10, 20% next year as a minimum. And we should send them flowers if it does.
Yeah.
Okay, we
Yeah,
can do
I
that.
mean, again, whatever they tell us, because they give us a kind of a notice about how much, what's going to be, whatever those numbers that they give us, we'll use those for next year.
Yeah.
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 So the only increase I foresee under the authority is on the liability side, which is the
So
legal.
the reality is, we get the number by this meeting every year to then plan around the number.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
then it doesn't, okay, that makes more, okay, that's easier.
Yeah, so it makes more sense just to wait for that number,
Yeah,
yeah.
and plug it in.
Got it. Okay,
Okay, the last one is just to kind of show you, how we kind of migrated to the next fiscal year. So our adopted budget had about $20,000 in a surplus, very small surplus. The amended budget is just slightly less than that because we had some carryover and some one-time things that were, I think so we had some repairs and maintenance, one-time costs that were budgeted. Through mid-year, and don't be alarmed by that, just because of the timing of when revenues come in mostly, we have a deficit, but that'll resolve by the end of the year. In fact, by the end of this current year, as it was alluded to, I'm expecting that mostly because on the expenditure side, we're going to see some savings from vacancies. We might end up the year with adding $260,000 to our reserves on an operating basis, but then that would cover what would I expect us to spend for capital. So that's good. I mean, we don't have to use reserves necessarily for that capital program. For next year, just based on the numbers that we went through preliminarily, it's looking like we're going to have some surplus. And at this point, there's no capital project that's been contemplated, but that's going to be a discussion for later as we move through the budget process.
We
So-
put the money aside for the tennis, I mean, is that ever gonna happen, the tennis court? and
It
stuff?
is, and it's gonna cost 10 times more.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
It's coming back next meeting.
Next meeting.
24th.
So we have put money away aside for that.
We have just shy of 300,000 already set aside for that, and then we'll need some additional monies, and then there'll be contributions coming from
From the
the
association.
association as well.
And when we get to that,
And all
time,
we're doing is a freaking path, right?
we're using some light dirt work.
We're gonna cost more than $300,000.
It's gonna cost probably double that, if we're lucky.
Can I just do it myself? I mean, do you need a special license to, probably?
We could totally do that. We could
I
make
have a
it a work.
tractor, I could just do it one weekend.
Yeah.
We get a Bobcat. We could buy a Bobcat for what it costs.
Seriously, because it would take one weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not joking, it will.
All right, so next steps?
They're regretting working for us right now, Jeff.
No.
It's true, I mean, I could do it, I wonder if I can apply.
I'll be back here in 2 weeks presenting, going through the same discussion, but just with the full council, and we'll indicate what your recommendations are to them, and then we'll get decisions and directions from them. And then, as I mentioned, that between March and April, the city staff will be developing the line item numbers. That's digging through each of them again. Again, we're doing better at this every year, where we're trying to refine those numbers. But it's just still, it's a process that's important to make sure that what we're planning for next year and proposing for next year is in line with what we're seeing and expect. We will have to make a decision and get direction from you on the rates. They've sent us a letter saying that they'd like a 3.5% increase based on their contract. It was 3%, 3.5%, or was it 5%?
I think it was 5%.
5%, yeah, it was 5%.
An increase.
So if we're gonna move forward with that, and there's a lot of other things going on around that, in terms of their services and things, but we're gonna have to make a decision fairly soon in the next couple of months, because we have notices that have to go out under Prop 218 if we have any increases to rates. Whether or not we have the refuse fund pay for it, or our general fund pay for it, but we would have to notice that. And then lastly, we will bring to you on the 28th of April the more final numbers on the revenues. So we'll have hopefully by then good numbers to rely on, and final decisions on the expenditure side of the equation. That's
Thank you.
that.
Thank you very much,
And-
looks good. Do you have to have a motion to receive and file or anything like
That
that?
would be great.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll make
Aye.
go ahead. you
I
do.
make a motion we receive and file.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Are we done?
Yep.
You-
Then I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Hey, wait, what,
Really great, thanks.
this keeps getting